Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. It is 10:06 a.m. This session is going to go until 11:45 a.m. Then we do have a recess, and we will be picking up at 1:30 and going till 4. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom, we have Assistant County Manager Rob Gelger, Interim County Manager Robin Campbell is joining us via Zoom. And we have the budget team joining us here today for another round of budget presentations. So the 2024 through 2025 budget presentations, and pass it to Nicole.
Yep, I'll take it.
Okay.
Yep. So good morning, Commissioners. Nicole Martinez, Budget and Fiscal Manager. Today, we're here to talk about the 2024 biennium. We're going to go through some presentations today, the Commissioner's Office, non-departmental, and we'll look at some of the funds that the Commissioners manage, and then we'll get a chance to talk to Tom concerning the Regional Housing Council. Today is just informational, so no decisions are needed today. And if there aren't any questions, I'll jump right into the presentation for Commissioners.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So what we're going to hear today is a requirement of state law as a prelude of going into the budget process. Is that what I understand this is? Is that right?
Yes, Commissioner. So per state law and as well as good management for budget practices, we are showing all of the policy level requests that departments put through and submitted. So now is the opportunity for them to share their wants and needs.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll share my screen and get to the Commissioner's presentation. So this is a standard presentation that we set for all of the departments, and so I'm just going to go through some of the items in the Commissioner's office. As some of the departments have already spoken to, these policy level requests were put in before we came to know what was going on with the revenues, so this will be informational and again, going through the normal budget process of letting you know what is placed in the budget. So the Commissioner's office is in charge of boards and county commissions, which is the Board of Health and the Transportation Improvement Board. Also, it's responsible for county-wide leadership at the legislative branch of county government, as well as providing strategic direction and managing county departments. As well as the Commissioner's office oversees day-to-day operations of the county government, and in its legislative capacity, it develops and monitors the budget for all county funds. It manages the non-departmental fund, and we'll get into that and what is actually included in the non-departmental fund, and then other funds as well. And as well as the Commissioner's office is in charge of Thurston County policies and procedures. We have a focus of economic development dedicated in the Commissioner's office, as well as coordination for law and justice, equity and inclusion, and the public information office is also located within the Commissioner's office. So this slide here is dedicated to the general fund in the Commissioner's office. It lays out the FTEs, what was actually in 2022, what's currently budgeted in 2023, and then what is proposed in 24 and 25. And again, the numbers proposed in 24 and 25 were part of a brainstorming session before the budget. We were able to look at revenues and expenses and seeing where we are. So we can see that the personnel cost is increasing again because of those policy level requests. And we'll get into those. If there's any questions, if not, I'll just keep going.
Question?
And then other funds. So there are other funds the Commissioner's office oversees. They're not necessarily something that has to do with our specific operations. They may be other operations within the county, but there are funds that are overseen in the Commissioner's office. So this is what this slide is dedicated to. The FTE here is associated mainly with ARPA, and so that resides within the Commissioner's office, so you'll see that. And you'll see in 2023, the personnel amount was high compared to the following years, and that is because the ARPA bonus was put into the commissioner's office. Okay. So, yes, I can go back.
On that one, you don't have the number of FTEs because,
In 2022,
yeah, I'm just wondering on Commissioner's other funds budget.
yes.
I just wondered, is that because we weren't doing it then, or?
So,
I'm just curious.
Sure. So the FTE are associated with ARPA. And in 2022, we didn't direct appropriate the positions that were in ARPA inside of the commissioner's office. So you don't see an FTE count. They were accounted for in, say, the general fund, and we transferred the expenses to ARPA. So in 2023, we tried to align that and direct appropriate. So you'll see personnel expenses, but it's because the FTE was sitting in general fund at the time.
So in Nicole, the FTEs are the court backlog FTEs.
Yes. Yes,
So these are FTEs in the prosecutor's office and public defense and 2 security officers in corrections, and these are various FTEs that we are charging to ARPA, as well as Diana Aaron's position.
so corrections deputies, defense attorney 3 in public defense. We have a jury administrator, a program manager, legal assistants. So those line up with those FTEs. Okay, so opportunities and challenges for the commissioner's office. These line up with some of the policy level requests that were put into the budget, as well as some of the challenges that the department is seeing. So we are seeing an opportunity to address climate change. We have a climate change project manager or program manager who is dedicated to advancing that objective. We have an opportunity with the climate mitigation plan to advance that if we would like to, as well as embracing diversity and awareness in all of the county actions. Just recently, DV brought before us the diversity plan to speak to that. So that's an opportunity as well for the commissioner's office to address that. We as well have support for economic development. We have a lot of LTAC grants, lodging tax grants, and tourism opportunities to bring in others from outside to promote within Thurston County. We also have the ability to address law enforcement with our needing growing county with the public safety sales tax and other issues, other ways of addressing public safety. So one of the challenges that the commissioner's office is facing is forming a new normal after post-pandemic. So after we've received a lot of funding from outside sources like ARPA to help mitigate some of the concerns that happened during the pandemic, we're seeing those sources come to an end. And we're trying to figure out where is our new normal, where is our level of service, where are our revenues at, what can we sustain and how we would grow. And so that's a challenge right now, as well as meeting community expectations as far as addressing homelessness and affordable housing has been a challenge for the commissioner's office. Okay. And I'll move forward.
And these are all general fund issues then?
They could be general fund or other funds, depending on the topic. So for instance, homelessness or affordable housing could be an issue that could be used with
That's what, again?
the affordable housing or homelessness. We have other sources of funding besides general fund to support that. So foundational public health, also with the home fund, there are some other funds that we could use. TST to address some of these issues as well, so they don't all have to be general
Detention
fund.
sales tax, potentially, the public safety sales tax would be one of the ones as well,
Yes.
which I think you mentioned.
So the opportunities and challenges of the commissioners is broad. These are just a few things that we've identified that are in our assessment are high priorities for the county. But of course, the board may have other opportunities that you'd like to pursue But because it is so broad, you have a lot of discretion in how we pay or what funds we use for these things, as long as they're legal uses of the funds.
Yeah, and therein lies my concern as we go through this and try to figure out, you know, everything is important, but what do you, I guess your must-do list must be coming later about that? Or is this a must-do list for everything already?
Yeah.
So the
This
one
is
we had the other day.
Yeah, oh,
Must
a couple
do.
weeks ago,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then we're gonna go through this. Well, what I'm wondering about is things like, the climate change aspect of it. So currently, that's under general fund, I think, and I try to do everything I can to protect the general fund. So I think that, that the climate change issue is really something that should be almost coming out of foundational public health, because it's about the wellness of our community in the end. And the diversity issue. I mean, it's about the wellness and how well we work together, how well we function, what makes this place a better place to live than elsewhere. So I look at those things as having a nexus to foundational public health. Uh, every bit as much, I'm not saying there's no connection with general fund, but general fund has such a limited scope in my estimation when I'm trying to protect it. So I don't know, how are we gonna, relate to that? And I guess, I don't know, that was my question to Robin. I've had a little bit of conversation about this.
Right, right. So we've talked a little about how these positions, the DEI position, the um climate change, the economic development, they are all on the cost plan. So it's that 60-40 split that they're billed out already. Can we do more? Very possibly. And that's part of this conversation is, are there other opportunities to bill more of their time, if not all of their time, to other funds? So we definitely, your budget team is more than ready to explore that with you as we go.
And if I may, relative to the public, foundational public health funding, unfortunately, while we locally can see a nexus to, some of our initiatives with what we might consider foundational public health, unfortunately, the state statute as well as the Department of Health on the state level really determines what are allowable uses for that funding. So we don't have, it's not fully flexible funding. In that
Maybe
regard.
not fully, but we can flex it a little more than we're doing now is that's what I'm shooting for, is to try and get away from taking everything out of the general fund, because I really do think that if, we hear about senior citizens dying during heat time or something, or maybe people freezing to death. Well, that's directly related to the climate, and it's directly related to the health. Is it a stretch?
Well, no, I'm just thinking of the racial equity. I mean, I think might be, the Board of Health passed structural, systemic racism as a public health crisis. So there's an easy nexus there if it falls into any of the buckets.
That's exactly where
My
I'm
mind's
going.
Exactly.
open to those funding,
Well,
ideas.
Right.
that when we first passed we did the hold on the racial equity position, it was when foundational public health first came out and there were like no limits. So there weren't all these buckets that we had to like now do. Now that foundational public health, there's like these really measured buckets. So we kind of got through on that racial equity position, right? And that nexus, because
Did it early.
we did it really early on. And not that I don't like disagree with you, Commissioner Edwards, but I'm trying to think on like which bucket, and just how the buckets are set up now with foundational public health. It's like, well, where would it kind of fit and how could we, you know, just do it? And, since it's not as flexible as it was back in 2021 when we first did the racial equity position.
When public health comes in and does their presentation, they will have, they have a foundation of public health and they'll be talking about that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, because I'd have to look at all those categories again and see if any of them really fit.
And it has gotten much
Could
more,
flex to fit.
It's changed over the past couple of years.
gotten a lot more prescriptive on what we can do
With the new money,
with the new money.
we do still have some flexible money though, and that's where I think there is an opportunity. Rob is absolutely correct that, these funds, as all restricted funds, come with very narrow interpretations on how they can be used, and we have to consider that. But at the same time, I think that with the with the DEI position in particular, and you've seen in the budget team's proposal on how to address the budget cut in the commissioner's office, I do think that we can charge a large portion of the DEI position to public health. So there are opportunities there, and those are the kinds of things that we want to be looking for all along as we go.
But, you know, as using that as an example, I mean, some time back, we had about 10 opioid deaths, and we declared the opioid problem as a public health emergency, so to speak. I don't remember the verbiage, but last year, we had 152 fentanyl deaths. And that certainly is the same type of issue, but it's gonna take some law enforcement intervention as well to deal with that serious problem. So they're in, you know, address law and justice needs of a growing community. Well, that becomes a public health issue as we're moving forward. I see Leah put out a notice recently about a new conniving maneuver by the state about a sex offender release activity. Well, that's all about our community being a healthy community. So we need to oversee that, and I think regardless of what the state says, we can stretch it a little farther because we need those positions and we don't have that kind of money in the general fund. And I think it's a if we went to court over it, we could show that that's the real deal for public health.
Based on what Thurston Thrive says about the social determinants of health, we can fund
Almost
everything
everything.
in our budget through
Almost.
foundational public health.
Really, and I think we need to head.
That's what I
that
learned at
direction.
Thurston Thrives.
Yeah.
I was on the executive committee.
Yeah,
Everything is connected to our health,
it is. Yes, it is.
our economic
Yeah.
development,
Yes,
our built environment, our law and justice system.
yes.
The Law and Justice Council is a subcommittee of the Thurston Thrives, which is a collective impact public health initiative.
It is. And on the other hand, though, I think that the state would indeed have something to say if we
let's
tried
take
to
'em
charge certain things.
I wanna take them to
contribute
court
health.
over it and use Thurston Thrives then as an example. We'll have them come in as a witness. Is this true or not? Let's kick them in the butt. The state always doesn't get to run the show solely. Let's challenge them. So
Is
to
it-
get into
the
court, we need to spend the money.
Right. So I think that even within the parameters of the state, we can do possibly a few more things that we're doing today.
Okay.
So let's find that stretch that we think is within state law that we're not currently doing.
Thank you.
David probably is sweating over it.
If he's ignoring me, because I just asked him if he was watching and he's not responding, so.
So,
Tell them not
All
to.
right, moving on. Nicole, take it away.
yeah, so we'll jump into some of the policy level proposals. And again, this was set before we got into the budget process as far as revenues coming into the county.
So, and I'm just gonna jump in. This is where your must-do list that Jennifer handed out today comes into play. You're gonna hear a lot of policy requests. The budget team is not suggesting that these are all must-dos. We want to hear from you on what you think the things on this list are the must-do items. So much like we used to do the high, medium, low, we're not doing that this time. We just want to hear from you if you think any of these items are must-dos. So use this list as we go, mark them, yes or no, or uh, check the ones that you think are must-dos, but we'll collect this list at the end of the week. And that's what we're going to use this for.
Well, mine is gonna be a lot of Ds in there. Ds for depends. I learned that from my seatmates here. It depends. And
That's always a
I
good idea.
wanna hear from you or the budget team, which one of these, as we go through, are a have to, or we get, somebody steals our birthday, or we get kicked out of office because we didn't follow the rules or something.
Yeah.
I
We-
need
we
to hear
will-
that, because you folks know which ones are the mandates versus I think what we do. I mean, there's a lot of different topics here.
Right. We will indicate to you if we think that something is a must-do.
All right, so the first item here is the public information specialist. So moving from the board, moving from 3 to 5 commissioners, as well as being able to help with transparency and permitting or showing our information to the public and broadcasting that. The PI office has put together a proposal here for 2 specialists. With the discontinuing of the TC Media contract, here where it shows $330,000, it sits in the general fund. The 2 positions would be less than that, and so there would be a net savings if you were to discontinuing TC Media and then employing the 2 specialists.
Can we comment on that now?
Yeah.
I don't know when to jump in exactly, but, okay, so I'm not saying the need isn't there. Again, I want to know about the must-do portion, but don't we have public information specialists at the Department of Health, at CPED, and at Public Works? It seems, and I don't know if those are still full, but so why, I guess, and why not, let's tighten up here a little bit and share the wealth, and we should have, to me, we ought to have one information supervisor, if you will, that oversees everything. Not have these individual, different, each division has their own person. I think we're in this together and we ought to have, so, okay, we've got 3 already, and I think ours, so that's 4. And do we have 2? We got 5, right? So we currently have 5 in the county. Well, I don't think that makes sense to add 2 more. I'm not against what they're doing by any means. I think we should consolidate our public service information positioning and make use of those folks working together. And so if Public Works wants to put something out about a road closure, they better get a hold of our people, not have their own person sitting there doing just road closures or whatever else their activities are. So I think we gotta tighten up, and I don't see that we're tightening up, so I can't mark this must do.
So if I may, the commissioner's office does have a supervisor, our PI supervisor, and she, in the office of the commissioner.
And one more, right? We have 2.
Right, but a supervisor position in particular, we have 1, she's a specialist. And so our supervisor is overlooking the public information that is going out from the different departments who have specialists within their offices. And so it's still that chain of command and making sure that all the information is sent out in a concise way and that it's the right message that's going out. These 2 specialists would help with that information, getting out to the community. It would help centralize what it is I believe that you're speaking to, with making sure that there's just not too many hands in the pot per se, or too much work. Too many people doing the same amount of work. And with expanding of the board, and getting rid of the TC Media contract, the need is definitely there.
So that is the crux of it right there, is that if we do away with the TC Media contract, we need to be able to hire some people to take over the broadcast aspect of the board meetings, and all of the community outreach that you do that's televised or on social media. The current staff cannot pick it up, even if you were to take all of the PIOs that are in the offices and departments, because like the auditor's office has a PIO and the sheriff's office has a PIO, and do we take them all? We coordinate, Megan coordinates with all of them. And I would also say that the ones that are in the departments quite often are grant funded or funded, all of them are funded with restricted funds and must only spend their time on very specific things. So could we consolidate them? Sure. Could they then work on other things? No. Um,
Well, I don't buy that business about they can't work on other things. I suppose you're going back to this one fund can't benefit another or that type of thing. But I
exactly right.
don't think we have to time out everything to that point in my estimation. I think we're gonna, if we're telling everybody else to cut 8% of their budget, we gotta come up with something. And I really think that some years back, we did a similar exercise on IT issues. Every outfit had their own IT thing, and we had, 10 different out, 10 different types of product trying to interconnect, and it was a nightmare. And so
Right.
this is no different. We just need to bite the bullet and say, okay, your folks are all working together. You might be assigned to the sheriff or auditor or public works or whatever, but this is how we're gonna do business, and we're gonna have one person in charge of it. I don't think we can just keep growing when we tell everybody else you gotta cut. So that's, I don't know what
So-
else to argue.
So this is a savings though, and when we take over what TC Media is doing, that audiovisual person is not only going to support the I'm sorry, they'll not only support the commissioner's office, they're gonna support offices and departments countywide, with all of the broadcasting needs and the coffee with the commissioners, and there are so many other things that we do through TC Media now that we need to continue. And doing this will save money. Even bringing on these two more people, you see that the cost is 244,000, but the savings is 330,000 from discontinuing. So we're going to be in a net positive position, even bringing in these people. But we can't cancel that contract without bringing staff in to do the work.
Well, we'll
So-
see, I guess.
I do not disagree that we need a centralized public information office. I am in complete agreement with you on that. I really think that having it all separate, and Megan does a great job in coordinating with everyone, but having all these separate, it is troublesome. So I'm right there with you on bringing everyone together under something a little bit more centralized, just like it happened with IT. However, my whole thing with the two positions is that as the county has grown, right, so has the need for people to be informed and, to have the meetings live streamed. And, that all takes additional staff time. It takes, just the whole piece of having someone who knows how to operate that system back there. And you know, we can cut back on the extras, right? The coffee with the commissioners, but still that doesn't, for the base level stuff, like live streaming our meetings, I mean, that still takes a person to be doing the audio visual situation. If something happens over here, there has to be someone here that has that expertise and knowledge to be able to know exactly what's happening, and that takes a different set of skills than just a public information person, really. It's more of a specific media person, really.
Right.
And so in that sense, you know, if we're kind of letting go of this contract, I feel like there has to be someone to kind of be able to fill that gap. If not, we're not going to be able to live stream our meetings. We're not going to, you know, the releases that are going to be out there, they're not going to be as frequent. And I don't think we want to step away from that. I think we want to make sure that, right, that we're getting out there even more, especially as our county is growing, and making sure that we're even more accessible. And, you know, again, we can let go on the extras, that's fine. But I think the need to still get out to the community as a basic as, I think that's still needed. And so, you know, I think for me, I'm seeing it as we either go one avenue or the other, right?
If I may, Commissioner, just to remind us sort of how we got here, that there's been another policy level conversation going on that's just not Thurston County, but all the other cities as well. As they withdraw or move away from TC Media, that means that what remains, if the board decided to continue with TC Media, there may not be the infrastructure and support to be able to continue.
I don't think there's an ability for them to exist if these other jurisdictions pull out. We can't do that.
Which basically
That's
means
exactly
we have
right.
to come up with our own solutions internally, which is the policy level proposal before you about, you know, which does create a net savings for the board to bring on the capacity and be able to continue to provide the services that we've been acquiring through TC Media.
Right. So we really don't have an option to stay with TC Media. Because the other jurisdictions are all pulling out, we can't now decide that we're going to stay in. So we have got to backfill this, and our franchise agreements with Comcast, which by the way bring in $1 million a year or more, require that we provide these certain services.
Robin?
So this is a must do. You asked what we think are must do's. We think this one is a must do.
Robin, Commissioner Menzer has a question.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
we have 12 more proposals in 8 and 7 minutes, so I'm gonna jump, like, I just wanna ask point blank, are both FTEs a must-do, or is one FTE a must-do, and we can cut coffees with commissioner and other things so that we could make do with one new person that's focused on the media stuff that TC Media needs to be backfilled?
We really believe that both of them are a must. I don't think that we can cut back enough on other things to make just one make it work.
Okay, those are my questions for that item.
I'm done.
Okay. And then,
So the next item there is for the equipment to help with the PIOs, and that would be funded through PEG. So it's not general fund.
not general.
Can't argue that.
The next policy level request here is to remove the end date for our diversity program manager. Currently, this position is already in the budget through 2025. To remove the end date would mean that there would be an impact in 2026.
But this is for foundational public health and not the general fund position.
No, this is our, so in our attempt to come up with reductions, this is the position in which we were saying that we could possibly move into foundational public health.
But this is a separate.
But this is a separate
It's a
position.
separate
Right.
Uh,
So this is the position.
Question. How come the numbers aren't the same on the verbiage of the policy level proposals and the must do or not proposal?
For instance, which
Well,
one?
like, purchase AV equipment, I just I mean, I take it that's some of the camera gear and stuff. Down here it says 88,000 on the verbiage, and it's 36 and 36 here. What's the difference there? Do you see what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I see.
So the 72.
I see.
Slide's not matching the chart.
It might be a typo. Let me,
No,
Which one is the
because-
typo?
let me pull up the proposal.
Okay.
Because public information specialists, those numbers also don't, well. yeah,
So for the
match,
most
so.
part, I only included expenditures on that sheet. Nicole talked about revenue and expenditures with the PIO because of the, part of the key in that one is replacement of the contract. But let me pull up the PEG one quickly.
I don't wanna slow us down, cause we got.
No, but that's a good question.
Yeah,
That's,
it
all-
is.
that's a factor of more than two.
So while she's looking that up, do you want me to?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So back to the diversity, this is the position that's currently in the commissioner's office.
I thought we already had removed the end date.
No, it's still in there until the end of 2025.
Robin, so,
It was extended until the budget cycle. So we had extended the end date through the end of 2025. And then Romero intended to bring it back now, and requested it be removed.
I have a different recollection.
We have the option to not do that now and do it at a later time, right?
You do indeed.
Is this the lobbyist for the federal side?
No, this is the diversity program manager
Oh,
position.
I see.
So,
Oh, yeah, let's put that over in foundational public health. That's where I'm going with it.
so is this a separate decision point of the removal of the end date from where the funding actually comes from?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So this is just saying where it sits right now in the general fund in the commissioner's office to remove
And
the
just
end
really
date.
the decision point is removal of the end date, being clear about that, apart from how it may be funded in the future.
So.
Yeah,
Could be done at the end of 2024.
I'll
Yes, it could.
change the funding.
And there's
There's
no-
one today.
right. No budget impact until 2026.
But why can't we change the funding if we agree as a board that foundational public health, change it today? Do something. I mean, let's. I know, I know, I get a
Good.
little antsy once.
That's a separate decision,
God
Okay.
dang.
right?
Okay,
So the next item is the federal lobbyist. This would be professional services for $120,000. The federal lobbyist would be able to reach out and look for different grant opportunities to actually bring revenue into the county. So it would be able to pay for itself. Okay.
And we're gonna have a report at some point on didn't we like authorize like a small, short pilot?
Yes.
And we're gonna talk about, so this should be deferred for a later decision.
I mean, we gotta find out if we're getting our money's worth and from, I don't know, I thought maybe Robin or Romero mentioned that sounds like they're finding grants and all kinds of things. And if they do, then it's worth
They
it.
are.
But if they don't, what are we gonna do?
well, one of the, I guess I'll talk about the HUD one. There was a HUD grant that became available that staff were already looking at, right? And they were coordinating this big effort to apply for it. And then they sat down with our federal lobbyist. The federal lobbyist walked them through like, this is what HUD is looking for. And just at the end of the conversation, I mean, they were like, oh, we don't qualify for this grant because they're looking for specific areas that we do not qualify, that this project wouldn't qualify for. And so there were a lot of other intricacies that our staff would have spent this whole time applying for this grant that we didn't even qualify for in the first place, really. And I mean, just for that, it's a huge time savings right there where just that sit down of talking with people who know about this specific grant and them walking them through it and what would make a strong project, you know, that was like enough for our staff to be like, okay, we actually, this is not a grant for us, but you know, this is kind of what we have in mind. That was just one of the few examples of how I've seen it already start working.
We've had a.
Right, and they've talked, we haven't actually gotten to the application part yet, but they've talked about being able to identify money for things we hadn't even thought we could go out for. Like, they think that there's money out there for new courtrooms. So we're going to be exploring that. So you did authorize a pilot through the end of this year, and we're getting off to a fast start.
If they get us the money to build a new courthouse, I'll hire them 10 times over.
No doubt.
ROI.
So the next policy level request is a grants analyst, and with the same understanding, I guess, is that the grant analyst would also be able to bring in revenue to the county, being able to look at different options and looking at our business models and the things that we do here and how it can be funded with other funding sources.
So what we know about Strategies 360 is they can find the money for us, but they are not grant writers. We need a grant writer to go along with the federal lobbyist if we continue that service. So either we'd bring one in-house, and we think that'd be less expensive than hiring a consultant to do the grant writing.
Did you have questions on that?
No, but I don't know. I don't see us headed down towards any budget cuts yet. I mean, if the money's not there, it's not there, so.
That's
I
absolutely
have to,
right. And these
Okay.
are the things.
the sheriff needs, he needs background investigators, a bunch of them, to fulfill even his current needs, let alone if something develops that he gets more needs. But he's actually using volunteers, from retired law enforcement entities that are interested in helping the community out. And can't we find people that have the expertise that are willing to help us out? Let's go over to the senior center and see if somebody needs something to do or something, because I just can't see that we have to buy everything. So I don't, just my point of view, I just don't see that we're making the cuts that we're talking about. We gotta set the example here for the rest of the county.
So we do have a list to go through of proposals of reductions to the commissioner's office as well. The next item here is a senior management analyst for the budget team. This analyst would be able to take care of all the new revenue sources that are coming through, as well as the expanding county, to help with getting the budget set up. Currently in the budget office, you have Jennifer and myself. We have one other analyst that is temporary and is solely towards the ARPA fund. So having another analyst would really help with getting the budget out.
We're living off of ARPA until 26, is that what the deal is?
Yes.
But that'll get us through this budget cycle of 2 years, won't it?
So this position is general fund, but we go through the cost plan, so that number would not necessarily be the total 157,000. Okay, so the next item here is to establish the Thurston County Alternative Program. So this is the homeless court program that we're looking to possibly model after San Diego's. This proposal would be funded from general fund, TST, veterans and home. And
Why general fund at all?
yes, and I was just gonna say there's an opportunity to not use general fund at all.
Do I harp enough on general fund? Sinking in there somewhere? God, well, that's, I mean, it ain't gonna get a dime out of me unless it does not include general fund. If I get a say, obviously, this is a democratic process, we'll see how it goes.
So the next proposal, are we ready? Okay, is for tourism awards through the LTAC fund. This is not general fund. We currently have in the base budget $50,000. This is asking for $100,000. This is to spend down the fund balance. Currently, right now in 23, we do have a total of $150,000 in there. So this would be keeping it the same going forward. The next item here is the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. So we currently have awarded around $337,000 to help with the climate mitigation plan. With efforts to continue that, the program manager here is asking for a little under $60,000 in FY 2025. From what I understand, she's actively looking for grants. So this could, a possibility for this would be a proviso that if grants awards were found, that it would not hit general fund.
I'm confused. Is this for the regional ILA that why is there no funding for 2024?
So we still have available funding out of the awarded 337 that will carry forward into 2024 to be able to continue that plan. And then just an additional 60,000 of the already awarded 330 is needed in 25 to finish up the objectives of that
But there's
plan.
still funding in that
There's still
pot of
funding.
money.
Right. So we were awarded 330, that money is still there. We're using it right now. There will be money that we're carrying forward into 2024 that has already been appropriated in the fund balance. This is an additional amount after 2024 passes.
But I'm just saying why, it's the exact same analysis. Why is it being treated differently for 24 and 25 on this piece of paper? They're both carry forwards, that we're gonna take the money out of there. There's still adequate funding there.
This is additional, not carry forward. This
You
request,
think the 337,000 is gone at the end of 2024?
yes. At the end of 2024,
But
all of that will be spent.
Partway through 25, Rebecca is estimating that the remainder, which I think is only in around 200 and
Right.
remind me,
There's a maintenance level change request for the Thurston mitigation plan that has 130,000 in 24 and 85, almost 86,000
there you
in
go.
25.
So that's what's left from the original 330. And it's being allocated in 24 and 25. It's already in the maintenance level. This policy level item, Rebecca is saying she's gonna run out of that money and needs an additional 60,000 to continue the work that's in the plan.
Oh, but this isn't just our portion of the interlocal agreement. This is work above and beyond the participation in the interlocal agreement.
Yeah, here she knows that it's for these two strategies here. It's one of them is to increase the electric vehicles and the other is to help with residential buildings, so it's additional work.
Is Rebecca watching so she can jump on?
That's a good question. While we wait to see if we can get Rebecca, I would just reiterate what Nicole was saying. We know that she's seeking grant funding, so you could proviso this to say that this money would be available should she find grants. And here's Rebecca.
That'd be fine.
Oh, there she is. Oh, good.
You're muted, Rebecca.
Hi, good morning. I had to turn off the YouTube, so I didn't get feedback. Yes, so Robin and Nicole answered the question adequately, but please ask me the question again, what the continuing confusion is.
The confusion is whether or not the money, so if I
Oh.
understand it, this is.
Yeah.
We've got our yearly fee or whatever you want to call it to participate in the interlocal agreement, and then you wanting to do work above and beyond that.
It's above and beyond. Yeah, I'm sorry. I blanked for a second on what your most recent question was. Yes, it's above and beyond. So this overall fund, I've calculated out uses for high impact actions to implement out of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. What we've agreed in the to allocate for the technical and administrative support services, that is what I believe you're referring to as the work in the ILA, is only a small portion of this. So
We've got that funded through the money we previously allocated, correct?
no, it would come out of this fund as well. So the overall, if the addition is allocated, then there's a total of about 280,000 in that fund, because the rollover, I think, is 220. So the addition would allow the 24 and 2025 administrative services, which are only about 50,000 of that 280,000. The rest of that would be allocated for implementation of projects and initiatives, such as the regional energy efficiency and electrification campaign, and doing an electric vehicle infrastructure assessment, which would allow us to be competitive for the grants that are coming down for EV infrastructure.
And you're saying that if we added this money by the end of 2025, between the administrative work you're calling it and these other things, then all that money will be spent? So
That is,
I'm just trying to figure
yeah,
out how much,
because
how
we're
far you
rolling
see
out
this.
the household energy efficiency program that the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative has chosen as the focus area for the focus initiative for our regional efforts. We are getting some grant money for that from the federal grant, but the addition would allow us to reach many more households, basically, with that program. I've calculated, depending on what types of incentives we roll out as the program is developed, it could allow us to reach between 75 and 300 more households with a residential energy efficiency incentive program.
And this is a conversion to electricity from, say, gas or something like that, right?
It would be an energy efficiency and electrification campaign is what we're currently in the process of designing.
Let me just ask a question. So if we convert to electricity, where does the electricity come from? What produces the electricity that we would be utilizing if we're going away from gas, for an example? Now we're gonna go to electricity. Where does the electricity come from? We're already facing brownouts.
The electricity comes from Puget Sound Energy's grid, which is getting cleaner every year as they comply with state mandate for clean energy
But it
transformation.
ultimately is coming from coal-fired plants somewhere.
That's being phased
Not
out,
for long.
not for long. The law phases
It'll
out.
be phased out
When we
by
get a couple brownouts, all that's
2030.
gonna change. We don't have the infrastructure in place to deal with this, so I don't think spending money to implement something we can't sustain makes sense at this point. For me, that's just my point. I know we've got a democratic process to work with, though, and that's what will rule the day.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're ready to move forward. Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So the next item is a legislative senior program manager. This also would help with being able to lobby for some of the concerns that we have here at the county, at the state level. This would be a general fund position. Because it is lobbying, it will not be able to be split. It will be 100% general fund.
This was one of my priorities, and again, this was my priority before we had the whole picture of things, so.
As is most of these on here. Yep.
Yeah, so, I don't see this as being a must-do item. This was something that if we had funding available, it would have been nice to kind of help coordinate efforts. But since it was me who brought it forward, I just want to let the board know, I don't see it even as a must-do item. It was a want, most of all.
On the second item back on the PEG fund, did we come up with an answer on that?
Nicole and I need to chat. I have a semi-answer, but I want to check in with Nicole before
Okay.
I tell you what it is.
So the next item on the list is the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail. This is the city of Rainier. They have a capital project currently in our CIP where we are providing $300,000 in park impact fees to help support this project. They are anticipating that those costs may increase and are asking for additional funding. We have just recently found out that there is a grant that may be available to them.
Is this the pickleball
Yes, it is.
shortfall?
Is there not any other fund that could help cover this instead of just general fund?
So possibly REIT, if they don't get the grant.
I mean, could we,
Something besides.
yeah, could we look maybe to see if this would qualify for REIT if we have enough?
We can look at rate two. Nicole, is this the project that you were saying there's already park impact fees?
Yes, so we already have park impact fees on the 300,000 of the project already, so for the additional amount is what we're looking for. But just speaking with Karen from Public Works, we said so there might possibly be a grant opportunity for the city of Rainier to apply for. So there is a possibility to do a proviso for this, saying if they get the grant money, that it may not need to hit general fund.
So we parked it in general fund, but we're seeking other opportunities.
Yes, as a placeholder.
Let's park it in foundational public health.
Well, parks,
General.
you know, gotta have parks for a healthy community.
People's mental.
It
and
is, their
physical
mental health, their physical health, everything depends on it, so.
Would it, if there are already 300,000 in park impact fees in this project, would it not be eligible for an additional 130 out of park impact fees?
So the nature of park impact fees that you can't use them for 100% of the project.
Okay.
Park impact fees have to pay for the additional in-service, or if you have additional
The
growth.
expansion of,
The expansion, right, so it wouldn't be able to be 100%.
Well, it technically isn't 100%.
Let's go 99.
It was this additional 130, they had set aside, right? Because they did and this 130 is
went up.
basically inflation coming in and just
Yep, that's it.
hitting them. So technically, it's not 100% of the project that's covered.
So we
Just-
can touch base with them again. From what I understood, that the project cost is estimated to be around $430,000. So if right now we already have 300 in park impact fees, then the other 130, depending on what that.
Let's pour the slab and do the rest of it later. I don't know, I mean, incrementally build it up.
Yeah, I would like to see other funding options for this if there's a possibility for it.
We'll look into it.
Thank you.
The next item is stipends for the advisory boards. So this is reimbursement for commuting costs when attending the meetings. This would not necessarily have to be general fund. It could be various funds depending on which members are sitting on what boards and what activity that is supporting. So there's an opportunity for looking at different sources here.
Foundational public health.
well, in part, right, that would be one for various boards or potentially.
I don't want to get too carried away on this stipend business because it can really get carried away once you start. So I'm not in favor of it at all, but.
And I believe, Robin, you had an example, right? You said that when we were doing proposals for, I think it was, you said housing, am I correct?
That's right. The original concept, I think, came out of the group that was scoring housing proposals and asking people from marginalized communities to participate in that. It's difficult for them because of the volume of what we were asking them to do, you know, and the time commitment. So that was the original idea of the stipend, and that could have been paid from the home funds.
Anywhere but the general fund.
Right, it would not have been general fund, but when we worked with the internal auditor on drafting a policy, we would need a broad countywide policy. So it's possible that there are other advisory committees that would be impacted.
Okay, I'm a no against this. I don't want to start this ball game going because I've seen so many government programs that were so well intended to do the right thing. And it turns into a big giant, sinkhole, I guess is the best way to put it.
I'll just share that at the Access to Justice conference that I just attended that was put on by the state, this was a major, major theme and topic of discussion, and it was emphasized as an absolutely critical component to trying to get diversity and broad input from the community to your advisory boards and commissions. The argument sort of being made that, like, you know, if we need expertise from lawyers or you know, different types of professional services because they have information that we need that we don't have, we pay them for that time. An advisory board is you're looking to people in the community with lived experience who actually have information you don't have, and it's very analogous. And to ask them to provide that to you for free when they have hardships is unreasonable, and essentially you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't sort of take this approach.
So, not that I disagree, but the whole issue is, and this is why the city of Olympia turned to us for the Regional Housing Council, is because of the infrastructure and staff commitment that it takes. And so this is, for me, this is just one part of it. I mean, how is it going, you know, the policy is one part of it. The whole other piece is there's gonna have to be someone who's gonna have to be doing
All the
all the
oversight.
other stuff to make sure that, you know, and setting up the infrastructure to like make sure that this is going out correctly. So I'm seeing one side of this, right, which, you know, we can have more conversation on, but I'm not really seeing the other side, the other piece of this, which is the infrastructure and, you know, like what would be the additional requirements for us to be able to do this? Is it like, or is it something that, you know, staff can do now and it's just gonna be an easy layout? Is it going to be easier once we have our new system in place, or can we still do it with our old system that we're, you know, going through? I just, not, again, like, I think this is good that we're talking about this. It's just one piece for me, and it doesn't show the other whole piece of the infrastructure needed to do this side of things.
And if I can follow up on the chair's comments, it's about like the body cam situation where we got free body cams to work with the sheriff's office with, and now look at what we're up against, so.
So we can definitely take this back.
But I would just, I gotta make a point on that. The body cams were, before we even knew we had a grant to help pay for the thing, I had a meeting with the sheriff and asked him, I wanna know I wanna walk through all of your funding priorities and I wanna try to meet your most critical needs. The number one funding priority for Sheriff Snaza in that budget cycle was body cams. So I was gonna support their purchase with or without a grant. It was great that we actually got some money to help us, but I was gonna fund those regardless. Just because you use that as an example, I just want the public to know that I was committed to that. Sheriff's office was committed to that. It wasn't just like, oh, let's just get the body cams because they're giving us money to support it. That was a number one priority of our sheriff's office, and it was one of my number one priorities of that.
So it started off free,
But you're right that there's always those
and it
corollary
expands,
costs.
so.
And that's a valid point,
That's
and
where
I
I'm at.
understand Commissioner Mejia's
Okay.
point about the corollary costs. We need to see the full cost picture of
Thank you.
what we're doing.
And
So we have a draft policy for stipends kind of in the works. It's in the hopper, making its way through the review process. And with that would need to come the procedures, but we put this placeholder in, just in case, it goes forward.
The economy will
Certainly
turn in
doesn't-
about 6 years, so let's look at it. Because we got no money, so.
Bless you.
All right,
Yep, I believe that's the last policy level request. So I know that we're over time. If the board would like to discuss some of the reductions, we could go through that.
We have to.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's talk about the reductions.
great. So, we met not too long ago and started talking about some possibilities of reductions for the commissioner's office as well as non-departmental. I do not have a slide or anything for you to speak to that, but, one of the options, was to fund a portion of the DEI position with public health funds. And so that would be around 115,000.
Nicole, could you stop sharing your screen?
Sure can.
Can you start with what's our target for our proportion of what we need to? 293.
237.
237, okay.
237.
Is it 237 or 273?
273, I think.
Let me double check the email. I think it's 237. Because I think we looked at this
Okay,
last
there's been a lot of confusion around that.
time.
It's 237. What's your name?
273 is. Placing my bet on that horse.
Who wants to be right?
I want you to be right.
So the answer is for the commissioner's office, 273.
270.
So then the next option is to, so currently right now for the DEI plan, we have $50,000 sitting in the budget. That plan is already gonna be funded through 2023, so we can take that out of the budget going forward and not keep that $50,000.
For what?
And actually, we're not gonna contract for that. Dee is writing it.
The DEI plan.
Yeah. He's gonna write it and execute it.
Okay.
The next item as a possibility is, when we were coming up with the cost for the two new commissioners and the aides, we did our best guess as far as how much those costs would come into. As we come into the budget cycle, we realized that we have $100,000 right there worth of savings that we will not need to be able to fund the commissioners and the aides that were placed in the budget.
We just overestimated
Just
the
overestimated.
need.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good.
Okay. And then the other option is to, so with the two commissioners, we had suggested having 2 additional aides. So an opportunity is to just maybe go with 1 aide and not 2 aides, or
What did you call?
aides, the exact
Aides?
aides.
The aides to the new county commissioners.
We had that.
So I
figured out.
would
We're
say,
gonna go to 2.
what?
I'm sorry.
I don't think we're gonna be sharing aides.
So that's,
So,
Had that
so
figured out.
the proposal on the table is to go with the first 3 items that Nicole recommended. That gets you to
265.
265,000, which is only short 800,000. And we could take that out of
Not
Not
800,
800,000.
8,000.
8,000.
8,000. Did I say 800?
Are you trying to give us heart attacks or what?
No, apparently I can find all kinds of savings when I'm sick. But that $8,000 we could easily take out of supplies or some other small thing. And so at this point in time, we are not proposing that we eliminate either of the new commissioner aides. We think we can get you there with the other 3 items.
I am in favor of doing the foundation, the full amount of 115 and the DEI plan, and then the, of course, the savings for 100. I think that's easy. So I'm in support of the proposal.
So I just want to get my notes clear. So instead of doing half foundation public health, he would want to do the whole amount as foundation public health.
150.
All right, thank you. Just making sure I have it right.
Is our commissioners,
That for the DAI?
yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, me too.
You can take any supply I have except my remarkable.
You really like it.
Yeah, I really like it.
so then the next department is non-departmental. I believe the target amount is 428,000.
Yes.
Okay, so non-departmental 428,000 is the target. So,
Is this gonna be a separate presentation?
oh, well, we could do it as a separate presentation, then. Yes, we
I
can do
mean,
that.
isn't that
There,
enough?
We can.
category?
There will be a
Either
presentation
one
on
goes in my notes.
non-departmental.
I think that is best to.
We only have 15 minutes left until the break, so what I would recommend is that we would pick up non-departmental after lunch.
Okay.
So is there any other for the commissioner's office that you would like to discuss right now? We went through some of the items, some of the policy items that we kind of had discussed earlier. And then we went through the proposal of the cuts. So with that, is there any item that commissioners have questions on?
Well, we might have disagreements, but that's just the way the system works, right?
I think I know what each thing is. That's the whole point of this. Walk through and understand what it is and why we need it. What was the other thing we were supposed to do before lunch? There was another,
Non-departmental.
Non-departmental.
The same
can we start
process.
that? I mean, wasn't it, aren't we here till 11:45?
Yeah, but let's go ahead. The non-departmental is gonna take longer than that.
Okay.
I
Unless
thought
you
we
think
only
it's
till
gonna.
11:30,
I can-
so,
11:45.
11:45 for
11:45.
hey,
Okay, then let's
Then-
move forward, yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
The-
let's
the
start.
only- The only caveat is that at 11:20, expect everyone's cell phones to go off.
Yep.
Where the emergency, the test of the integrated public alert warning system, so.
Oh, yeah, East Coast time.
Let me turn off my phone right now, that's
I don't
actually.
think it'll
It'll-
matter.
Really? You
It
want
won't
the phone?
matter, even if it's silenced, it will still, it's like a silver alert. Or amber.
Okay, well,
So I'm gonna share my screen so that we can jump into non-departmental. So if we're ready?
Yep.
Okay, so non-departmental, this is a department within the county that houses all of the operations that do not fall within a specific department or an office, or they may be related to more than one. So we group all those activities underneath non-departmental.
Is there a thing here you want me to go to?
Yes.
Sorry, which one was it?
Yep, it should say 00_23.
There it is.
They're early.
That's a little early.
all these people with two phones.
Too many.
Oh, I hope mine, like, it'll turn off eventually, right? Yeah, I hope so. My other phone is at home and the dogs will be going nuts.
Okay,
All right.
pass the test, okay, let's go.
So, non-departmental general fund expenses, you'll see that in personnel, there is budget amount around $300,000. However, there are no FTE. This is attributed to LEF. This is where we keep our LEF benefits, payments in there. And then the other funds, we can dive into those a little bit further into, the budget here to talk about what other funds are. And then here for non-departmental other funds, this amount is attributed to PEG capital equipment that is purchased through the public education fund. That expense sits here. So what are some of the non-departmental costs that we house? So again, LEF payments, we'll have membership and due payments, dues payments. We'll also have legal advertising for the budget, dispute resolution, county legislative advocacy. That's where we also house our animal services, ORCA, boundary review board. And also non-departmental also houses a lot of the transfers to some of our other departments that do not necessarily have the requirements for the use of the activities that they do need to be supported by general fund. So instance is transfers to CPED for non-permitted eligible cost, transfers to environmental health, as well as public health and social services. This is where the TRPC contract lives, as well as some debt payments. We also have the expense in here for our lake management districts, their indirect cost, and then also the cost for the state auditor. And if you don't have any questions, I'll keep going. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into policy level proposals here. So the first one here is a revenue proposal, and this has to do with Blake reimbursement. So this is the contract through June 30th, 2024. We're anticipating this is reimbursable, but 1.1, almost $1.2 million in revenue coming in. The expenses are sitting within other offices and departments that have eligible activity for this revenue. So it's a positive to come into the county. The
So I should
next,
say yes to that.
yes,
do.
must do.
Must do. Take the money.
The next item is the road levy shift, going through the revenue sources of the county and going through our model as to what's happening in the general fund. This was a proposal for the road levy shift of $1 million ongoing.
The budget team would say that to avoid a higher level increase, that this is also a must do.
And that's that road shift thing.
Road
Yep.
levy shift, yes.
Levy shift.
And how did we, just for sake of conversation, how did we settle on $1 million instead of 10 million or 500,000 or something? How did that pencil out to completing our mission in road activity, offsetting deficiencies in revenue? How did we come up with the million? I just want to hear that.
So the million is just a number. There was no, I don't want to say there was no thought given to it. I mean, this gets us back to where we started basically about 4 years ago before we started whittling it down.
Yeah, okay.
Weren't we talking about, weren't we doing 500,000 when we were playing with
Initially.
the numbers
We
together?
started, yeah, we started with 5, we bumped it up to 1 million, 500 to 1 million, and then, so that's where it sits in the forecast model.
Yeah, we started an exercise looking at the general fund with the revenues that we think that may be coming into the county, as well as the expenses that we're anticipating at maintenance level and baseline, and finessing the number and seeing where it might fit. And so $1 million off of that exercise was determined.
That's where it landed. It could be more, it could be less. That's completely up to the board. But what we didn't do yet, and what you will do when you meet with Public Works, is to review the road fund and see how much this reduces from the road fund.
Should I move on?
Yeah.
Ready?
Do you have questions for that?
Yeah, oh yeah, that was just more a curiosity than anything else. I wasn't.
And there are constraints, right, in terms
Sure.
of the amount of the shift. It couldn't be 10 million, it has to be.
That I don't know the answer to, but I guess,
There are limits. You can't take,
I'm not
So-
advocating for more at this point.
right. The limits are the levy rate.
So the next policy level request is a placeholder for the COLA. There was no dollar amount in there, it's just a placeholder at this point.
Which obviously, we have to do that, whatever we agree to do.
Whatever we agreed to do, yes. So a lot of the requests you'll see inside of non-department are placeholders for your consideration. The other is the class and comp study, the implementation of that. We broke it out into, or HR has broken it out into 3 phases. The first phase is $180,000 and the general fund impact is about $85,000. This is to bring up those positions that were identified up to market value and to adjust any compression issues that creates.
Oh, Romero's saying
Romero's-
goodbye.
Think enough.
Bye, Romero.
I'll jump to phase
Keep going.
2.
She said, keep going.
She's tracking him down to
Okay.
pull him back in.
Phase 2 is
Beat 'em up.
$2.2 million, and this has to do with adjusting salary ranges to meet the benchmarks, and also adjusting compression. And the general fund impact for phase 2 is estimated $819,000.
What, guess I'm looking at something else. Mine says 2.2 million.
Yes, so that's for all funds, general fund and other funds. If you would like to know just the general fund impact, it's $819,000.
Oh, it's just following.
Phase 3 is to put our at-will and MTP employees on a range and step. This was recommended by the study to help with creating consistency across the county. And the total amount there is $328,000, and the general fund impact would be $126,000.
So between the two, it's $1 million, basically, so
Correct.
roughly. So
Yes, all phases, about $1 million to the general fund.
So, implementing the comp class study is not a must-do item from the perspective of the budget team or necessarily from HR.
Okay, so 2 and 3, $1 million are not a must-do? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yes.
Except, aren't we concerned about retention, recruitment, a few little things?
We
like
absolutely are, and we've broken these into phases. While we're not saying never, we are saying maybe not now.
Sometime we're gonna have to figure out how valuable retention is at some point.
So
Versus-
there's
Sure.
before you go on, Nicole, I would just say that there is a perspective that this particular implementing this compact glass study would not necessarily bolster retention.
Okay, let's throw another thing out there. Work at home seems to be a big deal.
Yep.
Are we allowing work at home for retention or recruitment?
Where
We gotta
where
come up
it's
with an answer on this.
where it's possible and makes sense, I'd say that we're offering not necessarily 100% time working from home, but there are options and flexible schedules. I mean, some places we can't offer work from home.
Sure, I realize that. Corrections officer's gotta be at the jail.
There you go.
Gotta be
Yeah,
at the
gotta
jail.
be in the jail. The ER&R guys can't take the county trucks
Yeah.
home to work on them in their garage. But it's where we can.
Are we
surprising.
advertising that activity as a option to come work for us? When
I
we're
believe it
putting
is
out
flexible
announcements?
schedules is part of the advertising.
You know, like for IT, for example, that's like one of the fields where
They work.
Absolutely. Sherry's got a number of people working from home.
just because of the ability, right, that of what they do, they're able to do it. And I think it's offered, as Robin said, whenever possible. And I know that some other places face difficulty just because of the level of service that's required. But no, I'm in terms of the class and comp, right? I think I was very excited when we first did it. and it just, it hasn't turned out to
But hasn't that waned a little bit from comments that have come in?
Exactly. That is why this is not on our must-do list.
I mean, jeez.
And from what I've heard, I don't think the phased approach seems
We gotta do something.
to something,
I
right?
don't know what it is, but
I mean-
something.
The last item here is the security guard for Olympia and Lacey train station. And this request was put in for safety in that area, $101,000. It would be professional services.
So this is actually a community request, and this was a request that sent forward by the volunteers from that train station but by Yelm Highway. I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
Centennial.
The Centennial, yes, thank you. I was trying to think of the name. And the request was put forward just because of the, number of volunteers. There's usually someone there waiting until the last train, stops by. And so they requested just having some security, just because it's usually volunteers out there who are usually a little bit older, and so just having that additional.
We might wanna send them some notices to this issue coming up on the ballot in November. We might wanna send them some signs to put up there, because that could help as much as anything, having adequate law enforcement officers. The county, they're gonna have to call 911 like everybody else. This is, I'm empathetic to them, but in my estimation, the trains aren't even utilized to where they could be. I see those Amtrak trains going with 3 or 4 cars wherever they're going, clipping along. I think they ought to have 10 or 12 cars all the time and maybe lower the rates and get more participation. So I got mixed emotions about that, but I can't support this.
So, yeah, I wanted to bring this forward because it was a community request, and it was something that, they asked for, so I asked Nicole to add it onto our list of items for consideration.
So that's the last policy level request. So I'm gonna stop sharing and we can jump into possible reductions for the non-departmental. Okay. So the target amount is $428,000. And we have 2 proposals to help with reaching that target. And one is within non-departmental, we have a amount of money set aside to help with transferring revenue for the budget stabilization fund. We don't see that happening, and we're at $4 million right now in the budget stabilization fund. So we could take $400,000 from that line. And the other is that we have transfers out to public health to support various functions that they have going on within their department. We've worked with Corinne and the financial staff over there to see where they're able to free up some of those transfers, and we believe that we could get $100,000 from that.
And how much do we currently transfer to public health,
$1 million.
Nicole?
Almost
A million.
Where are you at?
This is the proposals to reduce
Reduce the
There's no
non-departmental. There's no slide on it.
So there is
There's no slide on it, okay.
Can you repeat the budget stabilization?
Sure.
What is that for?
So, when we reach the resolution, the requirements on the resolution in which we can transfer money from the general fund into budget stabilization, that $1 million transfer up to, we have allocated within non-departmental that authority to do so. So we're saying that we can take $400,000 from that line. We currently have $4 million in budget stabilization.
Well, this is rainy day fund.
Rainy day fund, yes.
So we don't need to transfer this additional 400,000.
That is correct.
Because we're on track with that, sort of.
Right, our revenues are not reaching the requirements for the transfer. And so we believe that we can use
Right, because
$400,000.
there's triggers. We don't have to transfer every year. We only transfer if there's certain triggers met.
That's correct.
And we're not gonna meet those this year. Okay, well, that makes sense.
So that would make us have 500,000 and the target is 428. That's all I have for this morning as far as non-departmental, unless you have any other questions.
Questions? I thought, oh,
I'm-
these were the
I'm
two.
st- I'm still a little curious about the rainy day fund. Is it gonna make it, is that gonna solve some problems if we, or if we do more, does it solve more problems? Or if we do less, does it do anything? So I'm
So-
just wondering the need.
So the rainy day fund, the way it was set up is that it's triggered based on emergencies. There are a number of factors that were laid out in that resolution on when that funding should be used. So if any of those triggers do happen, then that would be a viable funding source to use.
But even with what I remember about it, it takes 3 votes to make that happen.
Correct.
And a follow-up on that would be, what happens when we have 5 commissioners? Because that was put together before we started the 5 commissioner business. So when we get that put together, is it gonna take 5 instead of 3? Or do we need to readjust that ordinance before we have 5? I mean, you know, just, I wanna make sure we have access to it. And if I'm kind of a majority rule guy, so I don't know how that's gonna pencil out, and I'm even wondering right now if we aren't in an emergency. I can tell you, if you're a employee that's being cut or laid off or whatever, it's an emergency, so, and our ability to respond to the community needs, it's an emergency, so is that an adequate emergency? I don't know, because it would take 3 votes to make it happen anyway, so do we need to rethink that whole thing, and is that 400,000 good enough, not enough, whatever, so.
So I think, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say if the board should choose to reassess that resolution, we can certainly bring it forward for your reconsideration. The way it's written today is it takes a unanimous vote of the board to take money out of the rainy day fund.
Yes,
And best practices say that you should make it hard to take money out of the rainy day fund. It really does need to be an emergency, and you all need to agree that it is an emergency. So when we go to 5, the way it's currently written, it would take 5. But we can certainly bring that to you for reconsideration.
I think
Um,
supermajority or something, but I hate to see anyone, anyone, including myself, that would be able to have my thumb on the scale on that issue. So I do think we need to do something, but getting back to the 400, is it adequate? Is everything good?
4 million. There's 4 million in that fund.
400,000, I think.
Oh,
is what-
but taking the 400,000, no, that leaves money that could be transferred if the revenue triggers were to occur, and we don't think it will. So we can slow down the deposits.
Yeah,
That's
and
what the board-
that's kind of what we're doing. But is
Right.
that enough? That's all I'm saying. Is that enough? More or less, whatever. I don't know.
So we
I
currently,
haven't studied it to
so we
see what.
currently have 4 million in the rainy day fund.
Yes.
So if we wanted to transfer, because they can only get up to $5 million, so we need
Yes.
another $1 million to move it in there. If we're not anticipating that those revenues are happening, it's okay to reduce it, saying that we're not gonna transfer money from general fund into the reserve.
So Commissioner Edwards, you're asking, can we reduce more than 400,000 out of
I'm just
non-departmental?
using that, are we solving our problems by doing what's proposed, or should we do something, should we discuss it or do something different? That's all. I mean, I
Sure.
kind of agree with Ty, we're about there on that, but I just want to make
Right.
sure we cover it, and I don't know exactly if there's a threshold that limits us doing something, as long as all 3 of us agree to do that something. That's all.
There are limitations. The resolution has limitations on when you would take money out. So what are the three things? There has to be a significant economic downturn, and the
That's one thing.
resolution provides what that is. Or a legislative action that harms the county by at
Oh, he's
least
sticking it to us, so
$500,000.
that's there.
There's
What's the third one?
I'm trying to
It was a
Natural
declaration of
disaster.
a natural disaster, a declaration of.
So
Yeah.
any of those three things could designate, we take a vote on it and make a change, right?
Yep.
And we get to make the decision, is one of those things serious enough to classify? I mean, like unfunded mandates, they're always doing it to us, so, you know, that's a legislative decision. So I think there's plenty of leeway there. I'm just wondering are we getting enough out of it to help us? We're still gonna have this base amount. I'm just open for discussion on
I
that.
just wanted to clarify that this 400,000 is transferring revenue into the rainy day fund.
I know,
think that
but
you're
I'm-
speaking about
I'm
taking
just
it out.
saying, maybe we don't need to do that even, maybe.
Oh, so
That's exactly what we're saying. We don't need to do that. So cut this out of the budget.
right.
Okay, and we've agreed that, yeah, okay, we're not taking anything out, we're just not gonna
We're not
transfer
gonna,
it.
we're not putting. it
Right,
back.
we're not putting more in.
If we came up against a real problem, we might have to go back and say the legislature stuck it to us again, we're gonna need to take some money out.
And that
Okay,
would,
There you,
and that would
yes.
be a different line,
yeah,
because this is just
Okay.
to go in, not. to
thank you
come
very
out.
much for clarifying that.
Okay, so that's all I have for this morning as far as commissioners and
You
non-departmental.
gonna give us 3 minutes off?
Actually have
What's
until
after lunch?
1:30.
Yeah, so after lunch, we're gonna go into the commissioners' other funds, so like, conservation futures, REIT, some of those funds, and we'll dive into those financial plans.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, 11,
Won't be general fund.
it won't be general fund, okay, 11:42, we are in recess until 1:30.
Hope you feel better.